My name is John. I am the developer of DATSIFACT Narrative Writing. And DATSIFACT Narrative Writing is a tool, it's a brainstorming tool that students can use to help write better stories. Because it makes writing much more complete. It helps with idea generation, which helps students become much more successful writers. Now, the reason I started DATSIFACT is because I quickly became frustrated with my ability to teach my students how to write. And I tried writing workshop, and I tried 6+1 traits of writing, and those are successful, but I don't think they're specific enough for my students. And so I had to search for something that would help them create the content that I knew should be in a story. And so what I did is I started looking at everything I read analytically. Whether it's stories from published authors, or well-scored standardized writing tests, or even the stories that my students wrote, and I started looking for what made good writing good, and I started breaking it down and noticing that there were patterns that existed. Like good writing usually had dialogue, and they would include some of the characters' thoughts and feelings, and so a lot of things came and went and all this, and eventually I came up with DATSIFACT. And what I found is that makes student writing so much better. Now, the reason I'm starting with the narrative is because it's the first genre of writing that students are really supposed to master. And if you think about it, it makes sense. It's the first genre that students are actually exposed to. I mean, as early as 1, 2 years old, is we read to them stories, and it's something that they know. But unfortunately, all those stories they listen to, they don't really think about how the writer wrote them. They only think about how they heard them. And so we have to get them to think about the way they approach writing. And DATSIFACT really does help. And students are expected, and they practice writing stories up until 7th or 8th grade, and that really, I think, is too long, because they need to move past it and get into the other genres of writing, focusing on, upper level writing skills such as persuasive writing and analytical writing, and there are many others. If you look at a DATSIFACT title page, we can look at the 9 elements of DATSIFACT. It begins with D, that stands for dialogue, and you get a lot from dialogue. And these things I'll explain very quickly, because if you click on the link right here, it'll take you to another video in which I explain the DATSIFACT elements in more detail. Okay, all right, so we have the D that stands for dialogue. Then you have, which is people speaking. I'm not sure if I said that. The first A stands for action, the actions that the characters do. The first T stands for thoughts and feelings of the characters in a scene. The S stands for setting, which is the time and the place in which the story occurs. After setting, you have imagery, which are words that appeal to the senses. For DATSIFACT purposes, it's not the things that you see, because those go into setting and characterization, but it's the other elements, it's the other senses, such as our smell, the taste, how things feel, or the sound of the things in a scene. Okay, then after that we move into figurative language, and the figurative language is an all-encompassing term, and it's a lot of different things that make writing more poetic. I use similes and metaphors, which compare different things. Onomatopoeia, which are words that represent how the thing sounds in real life, like the meow of a cat or the ding of a bell. Or even personification, which is assigning human characteristics to things that aren't human, like your feet smelling or your nose running, or the tree branch reached down and grabbed you, or something like that. Then we move on to adverbs and adjectives, which describe the verbs and the nouns respectively. After that, you have characterization, which describes the character physically, how they look, as well as maybe a little story about them that gives the reader a little bit more information. And the last one is topic, and topic is saved really for personal narratives, and it's the students' chance to write their opinion on how the scene affected their lives. It's kind of an opinion editorial of sorts. Okay, so those are the 9 DATSIFACT elements. And I'm often asked what I want the students to do, and I want students to think about the story in terms of the DATSIFACT elements, get their ideas down on paper, and then they'll use those to weave their story, weave their first draft. DATSIFACT, if you're thinking about it, they really help all sorts of writers, from the really, really struggling writers to even advanced writers, and that's kind of the way I set it up. For the struggling writers, including those with learning disabilities or those who have a language barrier, such as ESL students or LEP students, what it does is, of course, it helps them with idea generation, but it also helps them because they can take those ideas from the template and they're kind of like puzzle pieces. You put a little action here, a little dialogue, add some setting at this point. Here you're going to fit in some characterization. And what it does is it helps them because it's concrete and it's tangible and they can move things around, which kind of helps with their writing ability because it helps them formulate the story in their head as they're doing it, you know, with their hands by adding sentences here and there. For proficient writers, for pretty good writers, DATSIFACT helps with, of course, content generation. And in my own experience, it's amazing that once students begin using DATSIFACT, they move from proficient writers to advanced writers very, very quickly. And that's one of the benefits of DATSIFACT that I was quite surprised about. But I mean, students who haven't necessarily struggled with writing but don't fully explain or expound on their writing, or they're not very detailed, it helps with them immensely. And as for the advanced writers, what it really does is, you know, they're already very good writers, but it helps them structure their stories much more like published writers do, as well as helps them with like the subtle nuance of what differentiates a good writer from a great writer. Like, you know, if you're writing dialogue, you can use a participial phrase with as an action with the dialogue. And, you know, in other videos I'll get into it, but, you know, it helps them mimic the authors that they like to read. Now, it's important that we learn narrative writing early because if they're going to be lawyers and doctors and computer engineers, they need as much practice with analytical writing and upper level writing as they can get, which means that we also have to get through the lower level writing as quickly as possible. And it is something that they kind of know in their head. They just really have to practice hard at it so students can see what it takes to become a good story writer. And then teachers the world over will figure out, okay, they really know how to write stories. Let's move on to persuasive writing and analytical writing and other types of writing. And so it sets a very good foundation for writing in our students' lives. Students also need to change the way they approach writing stories, because we teachers like to tell our students to show us, not tell us. Well, students have a lot of difficulty with that, but the way DATSIFACT is set up is that showing is embedded in DATSIFACT. You can't write dialogue and describe the thoughts and feelings of a character in a scene without showing. I mean, that's the epitome of showing. And so it makes students slow down their writing and show rather than tell, which helps with the voice, and overall it's much better writing. All students can become proficient writers, and DATSIFACT really helps. Because what we educators also haven't done is we haven't given students specific guidance on the components of good story writing. Until now, really, because DATSIFACT, that's what it's for. Students will use it to create the stories, and they'll find out soon enough as they're reading and they're looking for DATSIFACT elements. They're all there. They're all in the writing of the stories that they read. And that's really how we learn anything. We just mimic, you know, the professionals, the people that we watch. And if we can get them to do that, they'll start incorporating those elements in their own writing, and they're right where, you know, we want them to be. Okay, all right, and that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. If you want to know more about DATSIFACT, you can click right up there with a link to the DATSIFACT channel, or you can look in the description below, and down there you'll find a link to the DATSIFACT channel as well as a link to our website, www.datsifactwriting.com, as well as links to Facebook and possibly other social media sites, and, you know, anywhere else where you can find more DATSIFACT info. If you'd like, please like the video or leave a comment below, and I'll try to get back to you. And thanks for watching. please remember you can become better writer. In fact, we can become better writers together. You just got to know how to do it. It's going to take a little work, but we'll get you where you need to go. Thank you very much.